Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video, I want to go over this spreadsheet that I put together to track certain names, phrases, words, and how many times they show up in General Conference starting in 1942 until present. And these are all Second Coming related terms. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you end up liking it. Make sure to leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. Also make sure to share this with anyone that might find this interesting. Okay, so I've been playing around more with the Scripture Citation Index. This is scriptures.byu.edu. And it allows you to do multiple things. One of the things that you can do is you can search all these conference talks for whatever term you want to look for. Okay, it'll pull up every instance from 1942 until present. Okay, so what I did is, and I'm probably going to add on to this, but what I did is I've come up with all these different terms and I have them up here, and then each column corresponds to the term that's at the top. Okay, now I don't want to go over the whole thing right now because there's like little nuances and little details that might be lost unless I kind of do it in a certain order. So I'm going to start over here with these last two columns, and then I'll do additional videos and we'll just go down the line. And then toward the end, we'll do just like an overview of the entire thing, because you can look at little details and certain things, but then there's like, the bigger picture that's going on. So we're going to start with these two over here. Let me hide these other columns. Let's see, hide, and then we're going to zoom in so that everyone can see it. So what you have here, okay, we have columns Q and R. In column Q, we have the term New Jerusalem. In column R, we have watch ye therefore. In column B, as you can see, these are the years. And then in column A, this is the president of the church of that time. And it's rough because obviously President Nelson wasn't the president for all of 2018, but he was the president for the vast majority of 2018. So I just kind of roughly matched it up and kind of like rounded up or rounded down, like that. So this right here, watch ye therefore, I picked that because that comes from Luke 21. This is a second coming chapter. And at the end, in the context of the second coming, Christ says, watch ye therefore, and pray always, that ye be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. And there's actually some Joseph Smith translations in this. So for this one, and keep my commandments that ye, so, and pray always, and keep my commandments that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man when he shall come clothed in the glory of his Father. So that's the Joseph Smith translation. Okay, so I picked specific phrases from specific second coming scriptures. So let's just start with this one. Let's go down to 1942. So again, we have New Jerusalem in this column, in the first one, and then we have watch ye therefore in column R, or the second column. So the first instance shows up in 1947. I have these color coded. It goes from blue to green to yellow to orange to red to dark red. So obviously, as you get to the orange and red, that means more and more citations, or these where these words show up. Okay, so here we have it, 1947, 49, 111. Okay, you go up, you got the 50s, it's kind of brought up every now and then. In the late 60s, a few more times, and then we have the first reference for watch ye therefore, where somebody is quoting that scripture and putting it in their talk. Okay, so the first one in 1966 for watch ye therefore. Then you continue up, we have a gap right here. And then we have the second citation for watch ye therefore in 1975. Okay, and now in the 70s and 80s, there's kind of a cluster right here. Now, this is going to become apparent later on as we go down the line, and then it'll become really apparent once we look at the overall picture. But something was going on in specifically the 70s primarily, and then also somewhat the 60s, and then the early 80s, where, and you're going to see where there's just a lot of talk of the second coming, a lot of clustering of these numbers within this decade, in the surrounding decades. But the center point seems to be like the mid 70s. And I have some theories about that, but I'll talk about that later. But anyway, you have this kind of cluster right here from 76 to 80 of New Jerusalem. Okay. There were kind of like smaller clusters back here, but nothing as big so far as this one from 76 to 80. All right, so let's continue. And then in the 90s, it just kind of goes away. There's no more talk of New Jerusalem. There's only one instance in 1995. So starting in 1985, and I guess you could maybe even start in 1983, but 85, there's just nothing, and there's nothing over here for watch ye therefore. So we continue on, and as you can see, there's just nothing but white. It's all just white. We're in the 2000s. Oh, there's one. So for this whole decade, for the 2000s, from 2000 to 2010, only one reference of New Jerusalem, and then still nothing for watch ye therefore. So continue on, nothing, nothing, nothing. Now we're in 2018, still nothing. And then we get to 2019 and 2020, and we have both of them show up. Okay, so out of the very, very, very few times that watch ye therefore shows up, one of those times is in 2020. And then out of the few times that New Jerusalem shows up since, what did we say, 1985? We've only had two appearances of it, one in 1995 and one in 2008. And then you have this little cluster right here in 2019 and 2020. So what are the chances, do you think, that in 2020 you would have these two show up? They're already rare enough as it is, but both of them appear in 2020. And you're going to see, I mean, spoiler alert, but not really a spoiler. 2020 was a big year when it comes to second coming phrases showing up in General Conference. There's a lot, and not just in 2020, but I just wanted to show you this little detail right here, that these two phrases, these two terms that don't really show up very much, they both show up in 2020, and then another time in the case of New Jerusalem in 2019. And you really have to think about it. Just remember, each one of these is a year. It's a year. A year is a long time, you know. And then going back, you have to, like, you go all the way back to 1985, and you've only heard it two other times. That's crazy. So both of these times up here, all three of these instances are during President Nelson's time. And then we have one at the beginning of President Monson. And then we have one at the beginning of President Hinckley. And then no mention of it during President Benson. And then here's that larger cluster, all of which is during President Kimball. And there were interesting things going on. We've already covered one thing that was pretty fascinating during this time right here, 1979. This is when the BYU Jerusalem Center was announced. And then it was completed, I think it was by 83, I want to say. Or maybe it was 84. Maybe it was complete in 83 and then dedicated in 84. I can't remember, but the point is, okay, you have to look at this in this way. Um, okay, so we're looking at all the general authorities, everyone that's invited to speak in general conference. So when we're looking for these terms, it's basically getting a little peek into what they're thinking, right? Obviously, they have to be thinking these things in order to include them in their talks. So when you look at the big picture and you see all these different people bringing these terms up, it may be an indication that there's a lot of talk in the background as they're having meetings, as they're, um, leading the church, as they're having conferences with each other and so forth. So if in reality, for example, that the BYU Jerusalem Center is itself going to become a temple in the future, the millennial temple of Jerusalem, then you're probably going to be pretty excited about it, and there's probably going to be a lot of talk in the background about what's going on. And even if the BYU Jerusalem Center is not going to become a temple, well, it's kind of I want to choose my words carefully. It's kind of a first step, if nothing else, toward achieving that goal. If the church is going to be the ones that build the temple, and we have several quotes from oh, who was it? I did a video. It's Bruce R. McConkie for sure, but I think also Joseph Fielding Smith was another one. They were both of the opinion that it was going to be us that build the temple. Now, I'm not going to put any limits on the Lord. It could be the Jews that build the temple, and that's what's going to happen. But this is just one thing to think about. If, in fact, the BYU Jerusalem Center is going to be the temple, like that's more important of an event than when the Salt Lake Temple was constructed. I think in certain ways it's more important. It's like a big one of those things that has to happen first before the second coming. We know that there's got to be a temple in Jerusalem, and that one is corroborated across the board, multiple talks. That one's not really disputable. It's not one of these obscure little passages in the Journal of Discourses. So so if you're like one of the 12 apostles and you're sitting in on these conversations, you're part of the conversation, you're in the Salt Lake Temple, your weekly meeting with the other apostles, like that's big news. We know that there were a lot of miracles that went into the BYU Jerusalem Center. In fact, President or Elder Holland put a number on it. He said that there were 33 miracles that happened that made the BYU Jerusalem Center possible, and that the Lord is capable of doing his own work. And then he left some other hints too, but that's for that video. So if you're the leadership of the church back in this time in the 70s, it's like, whoa, this is really happening. Like it's happening. We need to get the people ready. And of course they're going to talk according to the Spirit in Revelation, but that's just one of my thoughts about this. You might have different thoughts about it, but something something big was going on during this time. For some reason there was a lot of talk in the 70s. Also into the 60s, you can see some of it here. It's going to become even more apparent in future videos, but they were definitely big into it here. And then after that, for like especially the late 80s and then into the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, it's quiet. It's a quiet time, especially in this case with New Jerusalem and Wachi, therefore. So it's just something to think about. I'm not making any predictions or setting anything in stone. All we can do is kind of like look at this and try and maybe make some sense of it and maybe get something out of it. So, all right, so that's it for this one. Hope you liked it. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it. Make sure to leave your thoughts and opinions and anything you have to say in the comments below. And then also make sure to share this with anyone that might find this interesting. And I'll talk to you guys later.